A lawyer for the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert says his legal team will study the court verdict on his bribery conviction before deciding whether or not to appeal. Mr. Olmert was convicted a month ago for his ties to a real estate deal involving the Holy Land development in Jerusalem, whilst he was mayor of the city before becoming Prime Minister. He's to be sentenced later this week. The prosecution's asking for a term of 6 years in prison. Well, despite his conviction during a sentence hearing in Tel Aviv yesterday, Mr. Olmert insisted he was innocent, refusing to admit guilt in exchange for a lighter sentence. Earlier, we spoke to the Jerusalem Post's legal affairs correspondent, Yonah.
This trial dates back to 2010 in terms of the charges, and the trial itself 2012. What we've got is what's been called the largest bribery scheme in the history of the country. Millions and millions of shekels being given to all of the top officials at the time in the mid-1990s and the early 2000s. In the city of Jerusalem. At the time, Ehud Olmert, who later became prime minister, was the mayor. He and pretty much everybody under him at every level was accused of being on the take. 10 out of the 13 defendants were convicted just a few weeks ago. Monday and Tuesday were the sentencing arguments. There was a very dramatic moment when Olmert stared down the judge and said, "I never took any bribes, directly, indirectly, me or my family or anyone around me, and I'm appealing to the Supreme Court." So in the end, how this is going to go is to the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, there is going to be the final sentencing decision on May 13th. Chances are Olmert will get at least 1 year. The state is asking for 6 years. Could be anywhere in between that, depending on whether Olmert gets sympathy from the judge for the fact that he's been prime minister and has given so much to the country. Up until now, I would say the judge has not really cared, surprisingly, that he was prime minister, and he may not get any special treatment. It has had a tremendous impact on Israeli politics because up until the last election, people really thought Olmert could come back. Benjamin Netanyahu is considered still the top contender for continuing maybe to another term as prime minister. And without Olmert in the race, it's not clear who could be a real serious contender for Netanyahu.